You brought up USC, so let's stay right there with the Pac-12, of course. An Angelino, Pac-12 close to my heart, and I gotta wonder. It took the market a little while to warm up to the idea that Lincoln Riley's move to USC meant a lot of other talented players were going to come with him. And he opened, I think they opened at like 30-1 or something to win the national title, and they've been bet pretty aggressively. Those numbers are long gone. But is it fair to say that potentially at this point, USC may be a little overrated in the Pac-12?
I think that's an extremely accurate assessment. When you look at this Trojans team and you go across the board and see what their odds look like to win the Pac-12, Drew, you referenced what their price is to win the national championship. We've seen Caleb Williams getting all sorts of buzz in the Heisman Trophy market by guys I truly respect, grabbing prices at 12-1, 15-1. I've seen him dip as low as 5 in some spots. But you do wonder if it's going to be a honeymoon for the first season with Lincoln Riley. I mean, so much of this roster is going to look a lot different, which is probably a good thing given how they took on water late in the year last season. But can you fit all those square pegs into round holes? Will all the players buy into your scheme right away? And I think this is going to be a fascinating case study because I believe Lincoln Riley can be the man for the job. Although USC is going to have to change the composition of their roster when they eventually make their way into the Big Ten. But as far as high-flying offenses, creating buzz, getting asses in the seats, most importantly, in LA where there are so many other entertainment avenues, I can't tell you how many people that I've spoken to want to bet USC to win a national championship, not just because of on-field merits, because they believe college football is a lot better. And I have to be careful, though. I can't throw too much shade because my better half is a proud USC alum, and I'm pretty sure she thinks that they're going to win their first national championship since the Pete Carroll era over the next 3 seasons.
She is sadly mistaken, but don't tell her that I said that.
Hey, trust me, Vaughn, I tell her that all the time, and she's got a life filled of disappointment with a lifetime commitment to me. So that's the reality of things.
Hey, PointsBet told us the biggest liability, USC to win that conference. The most win total bet is over 9.5 for USC. So if you are listening, ladies and gentlemen, fade the Trojans this season. But last year, I was one of the people that were all over the Washington Huskies. I was like, this is the team that's going to win the Pac-12, blah, blah, blah. And it just was not right at all. 4 wins. They were terrible. This year, the Pac-12 darling, why it seems like USC, it's really been Utah from the Sharps, in my opinion. The Utes seem like a team, after all the success last year, that they could win the Pac-12. Are you buying into that?
Well, you mentioned Washington, and I wish I could send multiple fruit baskets out to Jimmy Lake and their offensive philosophy because there was no coach for me that was more profitable looking to bet first half unders, knowing they love to bang their head into a brick wall against 8 and 9 man boxes because there was no threat of the passing game. But I don't want to throw salt in the wound. So when we look at Utah, I think that Kyle Whittingham finally has this team where they need to be. I mean, last year they were a trendy pick by a lot of folks at prices of 8-1 or greater to win the Pac-12. It didn't start off that way with a 1-2 start. You saw the change of quarterback with Cam Rising taking over for Charlie Brewer, and the rest was history from what they were able to accomplish. But you look at the way Utah is being priced. I think the win total was a shade low when it opened up in that 8.5 range for a team that I actually have favored in all 12 of their games, albeit short road favorites in their season opener against Florida and a trip later in the year to Autzen to take on Oregon. But they bring so much back. You do have to replace a talented linebacker who's taking his talents to the next level in Devin Lloyd. So I can understand the optimism there, but I think their price to win the Pac-12 is extremely fair. In my opinion, it doesn't offer a lot of value whatsoever. A team, though, that I think is flying a little bit under the radar, though, and what would have been the North Division in the past is the Oregon Ducks. I really believe they made the right decision in bringing in an influx of youth, especially at the head coach and coordinator positions. Kenny Dillingham was able to bring Bo Nix in, a quarterback that he recruited at Auburn. And while Nix can be one of the more mercurial quarterbacks and some of his decision-making leaves a lot to be desired, I think this team has one of the best linebacking cores in the entire Pac-12 if Noah Sewell and Justin Flo can stay on the field together. I have questions about their secondary and no doubt that they're going to be tested week 1 as 17-point dogs against the Georgia Bulldogs. But if you're looking for a team not named USC or Utah that can win the conference, I think Oregon is extremely opportunistic the way the schedule sets up with a very favorable road campaign. And even if they were to lose against Utah, they still could have a chance to see the Utes again in the conference championship. So a 3-1 Oregon, in my opinion, is probably the best bet to make in the Pac-12.
Can I stay on Oregon for a second and ask you basically what to expect game by game from these guys under this new regime? Because it's been a long time since you looked at an Oregon team and you thought, hey, the strength of this team might be its defense. And you mentioned the linebacking core and in general, just bringing in a defensive coordinator from Georgia. That's going to have a very different feel to it than the Oregon teams that we remember under, the last couple of regimes that were, capable of putting up 70 points on a given Saturday. What have you, number one, seen the market sort of adjust correctly in terms of this being more of a defensive team, in terms of totals, in terms of, just in, overall output of points? And, would you expect there to be a little bit of a market lag just because of how much, people are kind of anchored to the Ducks of old?
Well, I think there's going to be a huge overreaction or underreaction. And I know I'm not exactly putting myself on one side of the fence, given what we're going to see week 1 against Georgia. I mean, if Oregon goes out there, Drew, and we see them score 13 points in a defensive-minded game in hostile territory down in Atlanta, you could see the market trend down a little bit. But I don't think that'll be indicative for what this offense wants to do. One of the big things that they talked about in spring camp and after watching the spring game was trying to hit the home run. I mean, this was an Oregon offense in years past, to your point, especially under Chip Kelly, that was explosive. So much of it was predicated on the run, but they had grown rather conservative under Mario Cristobal. It was a team that wanted to try and hit you in the mouth. He wanted to stay true to his offensive line DNA. And I think Kenny Dillingham and company want to try and allow Bo Nix to throw deep. The problem for the Ducks is they're going to need a couple receivers to emerge. They, of course, lose Travis Dye down the coast to USC. So one of their game breakers in the backfield is gone, and we'll see what they get out of Brian Cardwell. But there was some optimism about guys like Chase Cota and Chris Hudson during spring practice that lead them to believe they have some legitimate vertical threats. The one thing that I am concerned about, as optimistic as I am about Oregon defensively, is they need some difference makers to emerge in the secondary. I think that's the one group that's going to get tested. Maybe not week 1 against Stetson Bennett and a Georgia team that we're not quite sure what they'll have as far as wide receivers are concerned, but it'll be on full display when Jaron Hall and that BYU offense come to town. So I think this is an Oregon team, to your point, that you're going to have to be able to adjust to very quickly to figure out what their style of play will be. And if they're better defensively and they want to run the football, there may be some opportunity to bet their games under the total.
I like that. And the last team I want to talk about, I love the Oregon take. I am not a fan of Bo Nix, though. I've been very adamant about that. That's the only thing keeping me from going hard on the Ducks this season. But one team I really like is UCLA with Chip Kelly this year. I mean, their schedule, they have 8 home games. Their non-conference schedule is Bowling Green, Alabama State, and South Alabama. I mean, over 8.5 wins seems super easy to me. I played that last night. I kind of like them at plus 900. I mean, are you buying into UCLA or are you fading the Bruins?
Yeah, I mean, Chip Kelly didn't exactly go out there and create a murderer's row for what UCLA is going to have to encounter non-conference-wise. Alabama State, one hell of a payday to travel out to L.A. in the Rose Bowl for that matchup, although we have seen some money at least come in on some of the Game of the Year numbers on Bowling Green. Not going to call for an outright upset from the Falcons, but it may not be a 5-touchdown laugher the people were looking for. And when you talk about this UCLA team, I mean, I think the level of optimism starts with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who I feel like he's in his 17th year under center for UCLA, the Las Vegas kid. But the one thing about DTR that's got UCLA fans excited is they claim his decision-making is a lot better, that he doesn't want to try and throw the ball into tight windows like he grew accustomed to in the past. You have an extremely talented running back in Zach Charbonnet, who we know can do it all. And I think they'll get him a little bit more involved in the passing game. Now, as far as UCLA defensively, I think that's going to be the key point to watch to figure out if this Bruins team is going to be able to get to 9 wins or more. I like what Chip Kelly's building. I think that they're going to have their hands full, especially going forward. But to UCLA's credit, they're beginning to identify the kind of players that they need to bring in. They're not necessarily trying to shoot for the pie in the sky with the 5-star recruits. It's bringing in players that they can mold for their system and try and get where they need to go. So I'm kind of with you there. It's not a bet that I made myself, but I would definitely lean over the total for the Bruins. And I can see them being a legitimate dark horse, one that I honestly would have made a much more compelling case for as far as the division odds if the Pac-12 was still with that North-South division, because I think they have the rightful shot to be the second best team in the South behind only USC.
It's a very fair point. Yeah, I think, we've done due service here to the Pac-12, and I think Bruins, if that soft schedule manifests to maybe a little inflated opinion of them as we get down the home stretch of the season, they'll have some opportunities to bet against that team. But ultimately, I'd be surprised if UCLA is really in the mix. What do you think, Vaughn?
Yeah, I mean, hey, like I said, big UCLA stand this season. I'll be playing UCLA and Oregon in the Pac-12, but yeah, I just fade USC and Utah. That's all I can say. More USC than anything. I think that's what we got from this.